Shabbos. In case you didn't know, maybe you did, I'm a big fan of Lubavitcher Rabbi. I know probably every conservative rabbi says that, but I really am a big fan of the Lubavitcher Rabbi. You may not know this, but I've got some yichus among the Hasidim. My dad's side of the family, my grandfather and his parents came over from what is now Belarus, was then Russia, a town called Vitebsk, which is actually where Mark Chagall lived. So I'm sure, my great-grandparents hung out with Chagall all the time. I'm sure they were very close in the old country. And they were Hasidim back there. They came over. Ultimately, my great-grandfather helped to found a shul in Detroit. Then my grandfather, my great-uncle, attended for quite some time. And it became a Lubavitcher shul. And so that was my identification with my grandfather, who, if you looked at him, you wouldn't think he was Lubavitch, but that was the shul, nevertheless, that he davened at. And so I remember when the Lubavitcher Rebbe died, and of course everyone was proclaiming that the Rebbe was the Messiah, right? Was the Mashiach. I said, Grandpa, what do you think about all these people who claim that the Rebbe is the Mashiach? Do you think he's the Mashiach? My grandfather looked at me and says, they're all a bunch of crazies. That was his take on the Rebbe as Mashiach. But nevertheless, the Rebbe made quite an impact on Judaism in the 20th century. We know that the Chabad movement as it exists, and of course the joke is we're finally going to get people to Mars, astronauts to Mars. They're going to open up the door to the space shuttle, and who's going to be there to greet them? Chabadists. Chabad is everywhere. It does amazing things. It really does amazing things, especially to those Jews who are seeking to get as far away as they can from Judaism, only to discover that wherever they are, India, Thailand, the most remote of places, they can still get a kosher meal. They can still have a seder. Right? So Chabad, in what it does, really does amazing things. The Rebbe also inaugurated the Shabbat candlelighting initiative. I picked up on the theme a little bit this past Rosh Hashanah. But it was the Rebbe who, after World War II, said we need to bring light into this world. And he inaugurated the Shabbat candlelighting initiative. And that's why if you open the New York Times today, not that I do, but if one did, you would see candlelighting times in the New York Times. And that's a result of the work of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Also, the idea that we should have as many children as possible, right, especially following the Holocaust, that was an initiative of Chabad Lubavitch. That was from the Rebbe, who said it's a mitzvah on Jews, right, to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth. And the Rebbe said, we just lost 6 million of our own. We have to work to replace them, right? And that was a Lubavitcher initiative that came from the Rebbe himself. Well, just this last week, I came across another teaching of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that really hit home, especially as 2015 comes to an end, as we looked at 2016. And we all know the angst that exists among all of us, among the world. And so it is that I came across this quotation from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who teaches, it is better to be kind than to be right. Those of you who are Facebook friends saw me post it on Facebook. Those of you who didn't see it on Facebook, why aren't you Facebook friends with me? Oh, you're not on, you're the one guy who's not on Facebook. Okay. It's better to be kind than to be right. Do you agree? Yes, everyone agrees. At all times, it is better to be kind than to be right. Sort of. Now we'll backtrack a little bit. Yes, as a general statement, it's better to be kind than to be right. When is he wrong? When is it not better to be kind than to be right? Safety, right? We have a few surgeons in the room. It's probably better to be right if you're a surgeon than to be kind. When else? When somebody has been unkind to somebody else, then it's better to be right than to be kind. Parenting to children. So it's better to be It's better to be right than to be kind when raising children. How about, and this is why I asked the question, how about with dealing with our own parents? Is it better to be right or to be kind? Right. So that brings us to our Torah portion this morning, and Rabbi Thunder Cloud is not a plant for the transition, but thank you for doing it nevertheless. If you'll turn with me in your Eitzchaim Chumashim to our Torah portion this morning, Parashat Vayechi. We're on page 297. 297. And as you're turning to page 297, let me set the theme for you for a moment. Jacob realizes his end is coming near. He's dying. So Jacob invites Joseph, his son, along with Joseph's two children, Ephraim and Manasseh, to come before Jacob. And there, of course, Joseph places the older one. Who is the older one, Ephraim or Manasseh? Right, Manasseh. Places Manasseh at Jacob's right hand, the strong hand, where he's to receive the blessing of the firstborn. And Joseph places Ephraim, the younger one, at Jacob's left hand, to receive the blessing of the second child, right? It's called a weaker blessing. And sure enough, as Jacob is about to bless Manasseh and Ephraim, what does he do? Switches his hands. So that Ephraim receives the blessing of the firstborn, and Manasseh receives the blessing of the secondborn. Now, of course, by the way, it's a blessing that we still continue this day. We know on Friday nights we bless our sons, right? May God make you like Ephraim and like Manasseh. And our rabbis ask, why should we ask of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob? Why do we ask our children to be blessed like Ephraim and Manasseh? And the answer is because they were the first two Jews to really grow up in exile, in the diaspora. And so we want our children to maintain their Jewishness despite growing up in the diaspora. So what do people who live in Israel bless their kids with? May God make you like Ephraim and like Manasseh. I don't know why, but that's how the tradition evolved. So we're still blessing our kids, may you be like Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay? But we see this inversion. Right? Well, it was not lost on Joseph either. So here we are on page 297, chapter 48, verse 17. When Joseph saw that his father Jacob was placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, he thought it wrong. So he took hold of his father's hand and moved it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's. Not so, father, Joseph said to his father, for the other one's the firstborn. Place your right hand on his head. Now, Joseph knows what it means to be the favored child who's not the firstborn. Joseph knows what it means to be the favored child who's not firstborn. So much of Joseph's service that he had, being thrown into a pit, right? Being sold out into slavery in Egypt, going down into prison in Egypt, was all because he was his father's favorite, even though he wasn't the firstborn. Joseph also knows the family history. Abraham had two sons, Isaac and Ishmael. Who was the firstborn? Who received the blessing? Right? Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. Who was the firstborn? Esau. Who received the blessing? Jacob. We know the problem. We know the issues. So here the same thing is about to happen. Joseph's firstborn is about to receive the blessing of the second one. And Joseph's secondborn is about to receive the blessing of the first one. Joseph is trying to resolve a century or so worth of problems and service by keeping things straight. So Joseph says, not so, father. For the other is the firstborn, Manasseh. Place your right hand on his head. But Jacob objected, saying, I know, my son. I know. He too shall become a people, and he too shall be great. Yet his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall be plentiful enough for nations. So he blessed them by day. Okay, and it goes on. Was Joseph right to try to correct what his father was doing? Our rabbis wrestle with this, and there's a great midrash in a midrashic collection called Tanchuma. that comes to really point out what's going on. Here Joseph says, no, Dad, you got it all wrong. You're doing it the wrong way, Dad. And Jacob replies in the Midrash, you have no idea. Who are you? I'm the one who wrestled with the angels. I'm the one who built up these 12 sons and now a nation. Who are you, Joseph? Yeah, great. You're second in command over all Egypt. That's wonderful. You may know how to work a cell phone better than me. That's fine. But who are you, Joseph? I'm still the grandfather. I'm the one who wrestled with the angels. I'm the one who came not face to face as Moses. I'm the one who had that encounter with God. I'm the one who received the special blessing. Who are you, Joseph, to tell me, Jacob, what to do? And in this way, the Midrash Tanchuma is coming to teach that no matter what, the older generation knows better. That the younger generation may be smarter, but the older generation is always wiser. And so, we have parents turning to children, reminding them of that. That the children might be smarter, but the parents are wiser. And that we should honor our parents and our grandparents in that way. So, is this a case of the pot calling the kettle black? Right? Jacob, or what comes around goes around. Jacob tricked his own father, hardly a sign of respect. And we know frequently in the Torah what goes around comes around. Could this be another example of what goes around comes around? Was Jacob right? Or was Joseph the right one? Now, Joseph ultimately comes to try to correct his father. His father says no. Joseph gives in. And I'll tell you, when we happen to know the history, that Ephraim probably became a larger tribe than Manasseh. It's historically accurate. But in the scheme of things, did it really matter? Did it matter whether Ephraim received the right blessing and Manasseh the second blessing? Did it matter? And I think at the end of the day, Joseph tried at first to be right, realized he wasn't going to win, and then decided it was better to be right. It was better to be kind than to be right. Joseph here sided with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, as it were. It's better to be kind than to be right. Now, we happen to live in a day and age where most people don't follow that teaching. In our interactions with each other, in our interactions with our parents, in our interactions with our kids, in our interactions on a global scale, we see most people try to argue to the point of being right. Whether they are or not is irrelevant. They think they are. And they put kindness in check. And in favor of being right, of trying to be right. So imagine now if the world followed what Joseph suggests, what the Lubavitcher Rebbe suggests, that indeed it is better to be kind than to be right. Now, I'm not talking about surgeons, and I'm not talking about perhaps parents raising young children, and we're not even talking about instances of global warfare. Those are different conversations. But when it comes to the interaction of friends, when it comes to the interaction of spouses, when it comes to how we talk to each other in day-to-day language, how do we follow the example of Joseph? And how do we follow the teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe who remind us it's better to be kind than to be right? And if you happen to disagree with this sermon, just remember, it's better to be kind than it is to be right. With that, we'll say Shabbat Shalom.